What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Danny and Bush coming at you with episode 16 of Dynasty Decisions. You guys know the drill. You guys send us your questions relating to Dynasty Fantasy Football, trades, rookies, contending, rebuilding, whatever the case is. We go over your teams. We answer them on here. If you want to be featured on a future episode, you can DM us either on Twitter, which are on the screen right now and linked in the description, or you can join our free Discord and DM us on there as well. So, Danny, how you doing today?
Doing well. And yeah, we're getting ready to pass the freaking gabagool and go over all your teams, baby. Let's fucking go. You guys love this series. We love making it for you. Let's get hype. Before we get into these videos, as always, we are on the road to 5,000 subscribers. If you guys enjoy content like this, as always, hit that subscribe button, smash that like button. It helps us grow and reach our goals. But anyways, let's get on to the video. But before we do that, hit the intro.
We're going to start off with John Wick 99's team. It's a 14-team Superflex league. You guys can see his roster on the screen there. Basically, he's got one question. He's got a current trade on the table right now, and he would be moving Miles Sanders in a 2022 second to receive David Montgomery. He said in general he likes his team, and I think when you look at his team, he's got Tannehill and Wentz in a 14-team Superflex, so he's a little weak at third quarterback, but it is a 14-teamer. And it looks like he has all his draft picks, so he could replenish quarterback that way. At wide receiver, he's very strong. Ridley McLaurin, DJ Moore. Running back, Antonio Gibson, Miles Sanders, Kareem Hunt, and Dallas Goedert. So for a 14-team league, you got a pretty good starting roster. Depth's a little bit of a concern all around, but I would say overall you got a pretty good roster. In terms of the trade, you got Miles Sanders and a 2022 second for David Montgomery. Which side of that do you lean?
Looking at this deal, you can clearly see Montgomery to me is a decent amount of a step up from Sanders because I do much more believe in the situation. I do believe in the player to a certain extent. And we saw last year when Montgomery is at his ceiling, he could be a bell cow workhorse type of back. And every single buzz this offseason has pointed to them using him in that facet again. So when I'm comparing it, Sanders, it's a lot more muddied of a situation. We don't know how this offense is going to look. We don't know how the quarterback situation is going to look. At least with Montgomery, there's a lot more stability in the situation. So I do think parting with Sanders in a 2 is probably an adequate package to go up and upgrade to a Montgomery. But yeah, what do you think on this?
I agree. I think when you look at the two, it's a complete dichotomy of situation. I would say most people would say that these guys are in the same tier of running back, but when you look at what the Eagles have done versus what the Bears have done and what the Bears have said, it's almost the opposite. It's like the Eagles are trying to take away Miles Sanders' workload, whereas Montgomery and the Bears are trying to, further bolster that league winner status that David Montgomery was at last year. And when you look from a durability perspective too, Montgomery's definitely been the more durable running back, especially when given a full workload. So I would lead the Montgomery side. It upgrades your starting roster, obviously. Then you have Gibson and David Montgomery and Kareem Hunt as your top 3 running backs, which I feel a little bit better than, right now and long-term than Gibson, Miles Sanders, and Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. And he also says, again, would you consider moving anyone else in particular? Is there anybody on this list aside from, again, Miles Sanders would have been the guy that we pointed out right away, but anybody else on this list that kind of jumps your eye right away?
Probably not. I would say it does make me nervous, the fact that Carson Wentz is your QB2 and you don't really have a quarterback 3 in a 14-team Superflex. The one thing that I would say is in a Superflex league where there's 14 teams, there's 28 starting quarterbacks that are going to be, started each and every week, presumably. And then only a couple teams in the league are going to have a starting quarterback as their third QB. So in my opinion, I'd probably just sit pat. I know you could potentially shop a 2022 first and Devontae Smith and try and go out and get a quarterback or something like that. But in my opinion, I would just wait to see what happens with the 22 draft class, because in my opinion, and in your opinion, that's going to be a pretty deep quarterback class, and you should be able to acquire a quarterback with your draft pick in that class, or at least, potentially make some moves to secure a quarterback in that draft class. And then at that point, if you have, a Desmond, I don't even know who's a middle tier quarterback, Sam
Ritter, Malik Willis, Carson Strong, Sam Howell, Spencer. There's so many.
Yeah, if you get one of those guys as your third quarterback and you got Tannehill, Wentz, let's say Wentz is taking a step up in his career, you got Tannehill, Wentz, and one of those young guys, then you're in great shape at quarterback. So yeah, I think I would just hold pat personally, but I would make the trade that you suggested.
Yep, for sure. Another one that I would look at is try to see what type of value you can get for Kareem Hunt, because people might be able to or be willing to overpay for him, because again, the running back thirst is completely crazy. If you can get like even a lower tier running back plus a wide receiver on it, or a lower tier running back plus a spot gap quarterback, or a lower tier running back plus a pick, that's something I would look at, because I do think Kareem Hunt, realistically, what is his ceiling right now with Nick Chubb in town? I don't really envision a scenario where he's a top 15 running back apart from an injury to Chubb. So
yeah, I agree on Hunt. I think he's a guy that some people are going to be willing to overpay for. They might even throw like Damian Harris and a first-round pick or something at you for Kareem Hunt. I don't know if somebody's going to be willing to make that deal, but they might if they don't believe in Damian Harris. So on to the next team that we got here. We got MikeyL, 10-team PPR Superflex tight end premium. And you guys can see his team on the screen there. The one thing I'm going to talk about really, because he asked a couple questions basically, and he didn't necessarily ask like what is our outlook on this team. We'll give it in a second, but basically he wanted to know what we thought of his trades. And he said that RBs flew off the board in his startup. So I'm imagining this just happened, this startup that he did. And he said he was not able to acquire more running back depth. So he ended up trading a first-round pick for Leonard Fournette. And he said probably an ill-advised move. Yeah, I would agree with you. I think it was an ill-advised move. And he said he made the trade because he wasn't high on the 2022 draft class. And here's the problem with that statement. I'm glad you brought up a statement like this, because I think a lot of dynasty players would have this kind of sentiment if they do watch a lot of college football and they're not high on a particular draft class. What you think about the draft class really doesn't matter, because your league mates, come rookie fever time, come NFL draft hype time, are going to overvalue those draft picks, whether the class is good or not. The 2019 draft class, for example, when Josh Jacobs, N'Keal Harry, and stuff were like the top picks, that class wasn't very good. And people would still overpay for those draft picks. So it doesn't matter how bad a class is. And I would argue that this class is a little better than it's being given credit for, this 2022 class. These picks are still going to be valuable. So if you're going to move a first-round pick, I would highly suggest, and you're looking to acquire a running back, you need that first-round pick to have optimal value. And I think if you waited until at the end of this season, you probably could have gotten, a Travis Etienne after a down season in Jacksonville, or potentially a David Montgomery after another solid season in Chicago for that first-round pick. And that's a much better asset to have than Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, we're going to get you guys to comment down below education by the end of the video, but let me educate real quick, okay? That 2022 first-round pick, the worst thing you can do as a fantasy football, as a dynasty player, or whatever you want to call yourself, is view it as that's a player. That's a future player that's not on my team. What you view that as? An appreciating asset, baby. Let's be honest here. People love the allure of that pick. People love the potential that pick can bring. That pick is not a player. Always remember that. You're not trading a player for Fournette right here. You're trading an asset that is going to be probably worth 5, 6, 7 times the amount of Fournette by the time the rookie draft comes, in all honesty. Like, if you were to give the 2022 second for Fournette, maybe you're worried and pitch. Okay, maybe I'd say, you know what? I probably still wouldn't agree with it, especially in a 10-team league. But do you? That's fine. But in a 10-team league, giving up a top 10 pick for Leonard Fournette, who, first of all, we're projecting into this role. We don't even know how the fucking Bucks situation is going to work out. Bush, you're a Bucks fan. Ronald Jones is the better pure runner. Giovanni Bernard is the better pure pass catcher. Leonard Fournette, in reality, is probably a mix of both. What is his true role on this team? Can we project him safely for 15, 20 carries to even return that type of value? And I don't even know if we can do that. So
even if the best case scenario happens, Ronald Jones goes down week 1. Leonard Fournette's the workhorse for Tampa Bay. He's a 1-year rental, right?
Yes.
Like
he's Mike Davis.
He's going to be, yeah, exactly. He's going to be Mike Davis. And I probably wouldn't make that trade even if I knew Ronald Jones was out for the entire season and Gio Bernard was out too, or something like that. So yeah, to me, I think he just overpaid here. He said it's a tough, the trade partners in this league are really tough. They're trying to win trades all the time. Unfortunately, sometimes you deal with trade partners like that. I would suggest finding the trade partners in your league that don't deal like that. Maybe it's only 2 or 3 guys in your league, and just don't trade with those people, because it's always a hassle to trade with people like that. So he made another trade that he said was probably, a bit of an overpay as well. And I probably would agree with you, especially given the context of your team. He said he traded a 2023 second-round pick for Gronkowski and a 2023 third. So I wouldn't hate this trade if you needed a tight end to start, right? Let's say you have, Hunter Long and Pat Freiermuth and Irv Smith, and you're like, what if none of these tight ends work out right away? I need somebody I can start for this season, and I'm a contending team. In that kind of circumstance, I don't mind a trade like that, but you have Darren Waller. It's a tight end premium, But are you going to really flex Rob Gronkowski on a week in and week out basis just because it's tight end premium? To me, you are never sitting Darren Waller in a tight end premium format, in any kind of tight end format. So to me, there was no reason to make this trade. It's not like Rob Gronkowski is a young player that's like ascending and Darren Waller's older. So you want to get some, youth injected into your team. So to me, that was just an ill-advised trade. I probably would have just stood pat with what you had. He said he wanted to lock down the Bucs tight end room. I personally would have just stood pat with what you had. You had Troutman, you had Howard, some young upside behind Darren Waller. I think your tight end room was set the way you had it.
Yeah, I mean, with Gronk, what are we talking about? Maybe a 40, 45 max reception tight end next year, like in all honesty. Like, especially with OJ back. I mean, realistically here, he had 45 receptions last year. Do we expect that to change at all, if not go down with OJ Howard coming back, who was averaging, 4.5 receptions per game in his own right in the first few?
Right.
I just don't see it the case. And then you're talking about it, all the injury issues, the age. Like, Gronk himself is probably worth a third-round pick. Personally, like if you're
from a value perspective, I don't hate the trade. I think the trade
is not awful,
fair value because you're getting a third in return. It's like, a bit of a trade up neutral type of move. If you needed a tight end that bad, I definitely understand the deal. I just personally wouldn't have made it with your team composition that you currently have. But all that being said, your team is very good and it's a 10-team league. So a lot of teams are going to be very good, but I definitely think you can compete because you have two quarterbacks that I very much believe in this season with Justin Herbert and Ryan Tannehill. You have some decent QB depth as well behind them. And then at running back, Aaron Jones, Najee Harris, that's pretty solid to start. Obviously, your running back 3 is a little weak in a 10-team league. I'd probably imagine it should be a bit better. Wide receiver, and that's probably why you made the Fournette trade, I'm guessing. At wide receiver, your wide receivers are very good. And then again, you have Darren Waller, and it looks like you have most of your picks outside of the first-round pick that you traded for Fournette. So overall, your team can compete. I just those two trades that you made, I probably wouldn't have made those trades.
Let's go on to the next team. That's going to be CabrelIssac's team. It's a 12-team Superflex full PPR league. You guys can see the team on the screen. Darnold, Wilson at quarterback in particular, running back Swift, Jones, etc. Wide receivers, Diggs, McLaurin, Lockett, Bateman. So clearly the big strength of his team is that wide receiver room. Tight ends, you got Tunyon in particular. His questions he has is, can you give me an evaluation of my team and whether or not I compete or if I'm stuck in middle and should rebuild? What are your initial thoughts when looking at this team?
Yeah, to me, you're clearly stuck in the middle. Your quarterbacks just are not good enough to compete. As much as I love Zach Wilson and much as I think Sam Darnold could bounce back this year, that's you need a lot to break right for those guys to be able to help your team win a championship. And your running backs, DeAndre Swift is the perfect asset to have in your situation because you are looking probably towards a rebuild. And DeAndre Swift, to me, is only going to appreciate in value the more we get into the Lions rebuilding their offense, potentially adding a superstar young quarterback to that team. And then DeAndre Swift himself probably having a pretty solid season as well. I think what I would do in your situation is the first guy I'm selling is Stephon Diggs. And it looks like you have 2 first-round picks next year, so you're already set up in a decent situation to add some young talent to your team. But Stephon Diggs doesn't belong. He's clearly the guy that I would sell on this team. You have young receivers that you can, and Tyler Lockett especially too. Those 2 guys for sure would be the ones I would sell, and potentially a lot of your running backs too, with Rojo and Raheem Mostert. If you can get anything for those guys, I view them, even though Rojo is young, I view him still more as a short-term asset because he is on a 1-year deal with Tampa Bay. Who knows if he returns on another contract with them? Who knows if he signs a Melvin Gordon-like contract elsewhere in free agency next offseason? Either way, I'd be looking to sell those guys for draft picks if you can get them. And it looks like you have good draft capital next year. You got 2 picks in each of the top 3 rounds. But I still would look to add draft capital to this team because it doesn't look like you can really compete yet. And I would say Sam Darnold is another guy that I'd be looking to sell if he gets out to a bit of a hot start or something like that and people think this is the next Ryan Tannehill. I might sell him then because we've seen more bad things about Sam Darnold thus far in his career.
Yeah, like you could probably get a first for Darnold. No, I would take that given the fact
maybe if you don't believe in him too, you could even sell him now while the hype is still there and we don't see him on the field yet because there is definitely a 50% chance that we just get Jets Sam Darnold in Carolina.
Yeah, dude, we're in sync though, man. Fucking the 2 names I was thinking was Diggs and Lockett, and right on cue. I think you could probably get realistically. Talk about, I don't know, what type of young receivers you have.
He's got Bateman and Elijah Moore. Maybe you could go out and acquire Devontae Smith and 2 firsts or something like that for Diggs.
If you can get that would be an absolute smash. Heck.
In your situation, because I do think you have some great cornerstone pieces like some of your young receivers like DeAndre Swift, what I'd be looking to do is acquire a team that could potentially have flexibility to push the chips in 2022. So if you can go out and acquire Javonte Williams, and we say this every time, There's a
Williams in a
2022
first.
window. Javonte Williams, if you can get Javonte Williams in a first-round pick and maybe even another young receiver on top of that for Stephon Diggs, I would absolutely be trying to make a trade like that.
Yep, absolutely agree there. So overall, I would. You said, should I rebuild? No, I would reload. This is a 2022 team. You acquire those 2022 draft assets, and heck, maybe at your rookie draft you don't like the talent on the board. Guess what? People are going to give you proven bets for those picks.
Or you can get 2023 picks too if you're not ready to compete at that point either.
So yeah, this is a 2022/2023 team, depending on the value that you're able to accrue. But yeah, you do have some nice, appealing assets to be able to sell off. So I do like your situation. Anyways, we can get on to Hudson's team and his trades. This is a 12-team full PPR, one quarterback league. At quarterback, Mahomes, Brady, Winston. Excellent room for a one quarterback league. Running backs, Gibson, Williams, David Johnson, Dillon, Elijah Mitchell. Wide receivers, you got Chase, Brown, Lamb, Ayuk. Yeah, that wide receiver core is just absurd.
Claypool, Higgins, Bateman, Terrace Marshall, Jesus.
Yeah, and then he also had Metcalf. I remember that too.
Yeah,
but we'll get into it. At tight ends, you got Fant and Freiermuth, and then you guys see the picks. So his question: after reacting to these trades I made since the last time I was on the show, where do you recommend I go from here? So if you guys recall, last time Hudson was on the show, he asked us if he should sell Metcalf, and the package that he got for Metcalf, let's just say he did well. He ended up giving up DK Metcalf and Kenneth Gainwell in exchange for Antonio Gibson, Laviska Shenault, and a 2022 third-round pick. Listen, if you guys are fans of the show, you know our thoughts on this deal. As much as I love Metcalf, I'm taking Gibson over him straight up. So the fact that you're also able to recoup basically Laviska Shenault for 3, if you equate Kenneth Gainwell to a 2022 third, you're basically getting Laviska Shenault for free in this deal.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you knocked it out of the park with this deal. I think, like Danny said, Gibson to me is a better asset right now than Metcalf is overall. As much as receivers have more longevity and Metcalf's a superstar receiver, and I'm not denying that fact, he does have some uncertainty in his future. And that alone drops him down to like an 8th overall dynasty wide receiver for me, which is still a great asset to have. But Gibson's like my RB5 or my RB6 in dynasty. So give me Gibson all day in this deal, the Gibson side.
Absolutely. So the next deal he ended up making, also, it's a 2 wide receiver for 2 wide receiver move. How did you end up with the better wide receiver package here? Can you explain this?
You got the better wide receiver in both ends. So he gets McCole Hardman and T. Higgins for KJ Hamler and Laviska Shenault. So if we just go 1 for 1, I would rather have McCole Hardman than KJ Hamler. As much as I'm like skeptical about this McCole Hardman hype that's coming out, I would still rather have him than KJ Hamler. And then he got T. Higgins for Laviska Shenault, which I don't even think is close. I think T. Higgins by a mile on that side of the deal.
Absolutely agree. So you smashed both your first 2 deals out at the park. And then we go on to the third one.
Oh, this is a great deal. I love this one.
I love this. So you got the guy that Bush absolutely hates and the guy that I absolutely love on opposite ends of the deal.
I don't absolutely hate Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I do think he is one of the more overrated dynasty assets that there is because of the team that he plays for. Because we talk about wide receiver face planners like Jalen Reagor and what Michael Pittman, a lot of people like to equate Henry Ruggs did. CH basically did the running back version of face planning last year. So I am going to trust in Javonte Williams, who I think is in a better situation than Clyde Edwards-Helaire long-term, which doesn't make sense to a lot of people. But if you have our draft guide, you can sign up on Underdog using code FSC to acquire our draft guide, minimum $10 deposit. You get $25 free to play with. Both of our draft guides for free. Anyway, Javonte Williams, to me, is going to have a great long-term outlook because of the situation with Melvin Gordon. So he is a perfect guy to acquire in the situation that Hudson's in. He has a very young team. He's got a lot of young assets. He is going to be competitive for a very long time, and Javonte Williams is a guy that can help him further that. And then on top of that, you get a first-round pick, too. And I have Javonte Williams straight up ranked over CEH.
Same. I have Javonte Williams right now as my Dynasty RB17, CEH a Dynasty RB19.
Yeah, and I have them about in the same range as well.
Yeah, so overall, you guys know we love that freaking deal all day, every day. You got a first round pick out of it.
Close.
Yeah, and let's talk about this next deal because you mentioned it. Let's just say for ease, McCole Hardman, that 2022 second is probably about fair value. Let's just say hypothetically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give or take. You got Rashad Bateman and Terrace Marshall for a 2022 first. Looking at your team, that's going to be a freaking late pick. I mean, that wide receiver room alone is going to win you a ton of fucking games. So let's just say it's a late 2022 first for freaking Bateman and Marshall in a 1 quarterback league.
Yep. Yeah, and in a one quarterback league too, because you guys might look at his team and be like, oh, well, he's got like Tom Brady and Jameis Winston. It's like, but he has Patrick Mahomes. So it's not like he's going to ever use another quarterback in his lineup anyway. So when you have Mahomes, there's really no reason to have quarterback depth outside of young, upside. And then running backs is like on his roster. It's really the only weak part of his roster outside of his top two guys. And we always say this all the time, right? When you're a rebuilding team, which I assume at one point you were a rebuilding team, you want to align your running backs' primes with the rest of your players' primes. And I think you've done that really well because you have a second-year running back and a rookie running back as your primary two running backs. And then you also have, your first-round pick next year, and you have so much flexibility because of your wide receiver room to be able to upgrade at running back if you need to. If you wanted to trade Jamar Chase for a running back right now, you could absolutely go out and do that if you find yourself really competitive early on in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that might be one of the best wide receiver cores, like in terms of young ascending assets I've ever seen. Like genuinely, straight up.
And that's like just a straight my guys core too. Like I just love everybody in there. Like it's a mix of both of our guys because you got Lamb in there, you got
Chase,
Ayuk,
Brown,
Claypool, and Bateman. Like I love that core. So yeah, you're doing a great job so far. His final deal that he makes, it looks like he got a 2022 second from Mike Gesicki. No complaints there. I definitely think that's, probably equivalent value. I think I would give the lean to the pick, but I think if you needed a tight end, I wouldn't hate a trade like that. But in your situation, you got a solid tight end room with Noah Fant and Pat Freiermuth. So yeah, parting with Mike Gesicki for a second round pick, I definitely like that side for you.
All right, so on to the next team, and this team we actually got from Mark Common. It's a one quarterback dynasty league. Didn't really specify if it was PPR or not in the thing, but the team Ryan Tannehill starting quarterback. Running backs, you got Carson and Mixon, in particular with Montgomery on the bench. Wide receivers, Sutton, Lamb, Jefferson in the starting lineup, and tight end Cole Kmet. It's also an IDP league, but again, like we can't really comment too far on that. So we'll do our due diligence here. But yeah, we'll talk mostly about the offensive guys here. Anyways, first trade he wanted us to review. He ended up giving up Antonio Gibson and got back Joe Mixon in a second. And yeah, Corey, you can start this.
Yeah, you guys probably know what our reaction is to that trade. We wouldn't do that. And it's not just because Joe Mixon's like older. That's not like if anybody thinks this is an age thing, like I have Gibson ranked over Mixon this year. And Gibson is significantly younger with less tread on his tires, with less injury history, I guess, relative to his turf toe right now. But I would easily take Gibson over Joe Mixon in a dynasty league. So the fact that like the 2022 second is not enough for me to give up Gibson for Mixon. I would probably need a first and maybe even another piece after that.
Yeah, for me personally, I'd need at least a first and a young piece attached to Mixon to move up.
You did miss it. He has Javonte Williams on his bench too. So he has like 4 startable running backs, at least by mid-season this year. So his running back core was already good. So that's kind of why I'm not really sure why you made this trade, to be honest, too, because you kind of boxed yourself into a competing window by trading for Joe Mixon when you already had some flexibility with having Gibson, Carson, Montgomery, and Javonte Williams. You would have had a guy like Carson who's going to be good for the next 2 years or so, and you would have had the youth of Gibson and the youth of Javonte Williams to continue that strong running back core to the future. So yeah, this is a trade I wouldn't have made for sure. I don't think it really helps you this year. I don't think it helps you in the future either.
Yep, absolutely. So the next deal he has here, again, we're not IDP guys, but getting a first round pick for a package of a second round and a third round linebacker pick, like I'm taking the first any day here.
Yeah, even if we'll just treat the picks as if it's the 206 to 301 for a 2022 first and a 2022 third. Like I will gladly take the first rounder. I'm assuming you were mid draft when somebody did this and they wanted, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah for whatever reason. Maybe they're like a Browns fan or something, or they think he's going to be like the next Jamal Adams or Isaiah Simmons or Derwin James or something like that. So yeah, the fact that you were able to trade out of a mid-second round pick that we're going to treat as like a Terrace Marshall or like a Rondell Moore and get a first round pick out of it. Yeah, like that's definitely a great spot for you to make a trade like that.
Yep, absolutely. And the next trade. All right. You got Javonte Williams at the 108 in a one quarterback league. And straight up in this deal, the guy that you gave up for him, I would prefer Javonte too. So the guy basically moved up to take a player that I would take Javonte over regardless.
Yeah, and you got an extra third out of it. So yeah, another great trade for you there. That's a risky trade. If I were you, I would have just stood pat. I'm fine without the extra third round pick.
Take
Unless you knew beforehand, like who was going 106, who was going 107, I probably don't make trades like this because I think I would have just stood pat. To me, the 106 for Javonte Williams is probably a value in a one quarterback league. So I probably would have just stood pat and taken Javonte there. But the fact that you got a third rounder out of it is definitely great. More power to you.
Yep. So the next deal, he basically just swapped the 506 this year for a future fifth. Yeah, if he didn't like the board, I think that's a fine pick.
Yep.
Not much else to say on that. The next deal, though, what are your thoughts on Barkley and Julio for Montgomery, Fuller, and Jefferson?
Yeah, this one's an interesting deal to kind of work through just because you have a lot of differing pieces. So to me, the way I break this deal down is I personally would take Saquon Barkley over Montgomery and Jefferson combined. That's the way I view Saquon Barkley. Maybe you're not as high on Saquon Barkley as I am. Maybe you think, the injuries are going to catch up with him. Whatever the case is, you don't believe in the player long term. If that's the case, I think you got appropriate value. But the way I view Saquon Barkley, I would take the Saquon side. And I think Julio Jones versus Will Fuller is basically a wash. They're both, relatively win now assets, with Jones being a lot better this year and the next year probably than Fuller. So I think that's pretty much a wash on that side. But I personally would lean the Saquon Julio Jones side.
Yeah, I agree with that. Following deal, he ended up basically getting Jared Goff for 2 third-round picks. And if you need a quarterback 3 for the year, I don't think this is a heavy price to pay whatsoever.
This is quarterback 2, and it's a one quarterback league.
It's a one quarterback league. Okay. I wouldn't have done it in a one quarterback then. I'm automatically ingrained to think Superflex in a one quarterback league.
I think this is a fine deal because the way I break this down is those 2 picks that you got cancel out one of the thirds. Let's just say, like, for simplicity's sake, let's cancel out one of the thirds. So then you basically got Goff for 2022 third. So I think you were screwed. If Tannehill went down this year, you were screwed. You had no quarterback. So the fact that you get Goff out of it to keep yourself competitive if anything happens to Tannehill, I definitely don't mind a trade like that for you. So I'll go a little easier on you than Danny just did. So I actually do like that trade.
Yeah, I'm just ingrained into Superflex, but even in a one quarterback league, to be honest, like, I probably would have went for something better. I probably would have tried for like a Jameis Winston, even like something like that. You probably could have gone Jameis Winston for this package. So overall, I mean, I don't mind it though, because in your situation with a contending team, you needed that backup quarterback. But Goff just maybe wouldn't have been the target I would have looked at. But other questions he has. Any additional moves he should make this offseason? Looking at your team straight up, the couple names that I'm looking at, Chris Carson, Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I mean, he's in a winning window right now, clearly. So I don't mind holding on to those guys because it looks like you're, going for it. So what I'd be looking to do, and this is a very viable strategy. I know maybe if you just listen to our episodes of Dynasty Decisions, you don't really know too much about Dynasty Fantasy Football in general. It is okay to have aging assets on your team if you're winning, as long as you have some youth behind them to replenish and, once those guys do, go over the hill, if Joe Mixon 3 years from now is completely useless for fantasy, he's Mark Ingram, David Johnson territory of an asset. As long as you have a guy like Javonte Williams on your bench, like you do, to replenish that production, then you're okay. You can hold on to guys and let them age. It's okay to sit on aging assets and get the most out of their production while you can. Yeah,
it's just you have to also analyze when is their peak value gonna
and Mixon absolutely could be at peak value right now, which
that's right. That's how I view it.
Definitely. If somebody, like, I guess you can't probably go to the Gibson owner and get Gibson back, but if you wanted to try and flip him for Akers, or if you wanted to go after even Swift or someone like that and potentially try and pull something of that nature to somebody who is a contending team, then I don't mind a deal like that. And same goes for Chris Carson. You're probably not going to get too great of an asset, but you could, you might be able to flip Chris Carson for a lower tier running back and a pick or something like that.
So Alex Metzger. It is a super flex League 12 team, and it's actually his first year in the league. So quarterbacks, you guys can see Hurts, Rodgers, and Brady. Running backs, Kamara, Taylor in particular. Wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, Michael Thomas, Chase Claypool in particular. Tight ends, Fant and Njoku. And you guys can see the picks there. He basically, I guess, wants us to review the trades and talk about where he can go with this team. So the first trade he made.
I love this trade. This is a great trade.
He ended up getting Jonathan Taylor for a first, a second, and Tyler Boyd. And Bush hit the nail on the head there. This is just ridiculous value here. Fantastic.
Yeah, that's highway robbery. There's no way you should be able to get Jonathan Taylor for anything less than 2 firsts plus a better piece than Tyler Boyd. So, like, if you traded a first in 2022, a first in 2023, and Chase Claypool away, that should be enough to get Jonathan Taylor. So the fact that you got him for, 50 cents on the dollar, I would say, is definitely a great trade for you. So you definitely killed that one.
Yep, absolutely agree. And then the second trade he has here, keep in mind, this is a super flex league. Goff, Irv Smith, and AJ Dillon for Aaron Rodgers.
Trades that I hear people talking about this all the time. That's in a bunch of noise trade. You traded a bunch of noise for Aaron Rodgers. That's basically what happened here. Irv Smith has some value, so I keep him in mind. But AJ Dillon is, a wishful like RB3, 4 in Dynasty right now. The fact that you got clearly the best asset in this deal, whether he plays for the Packers or not, if he goes to the Broncos, the Panthers, whatever team he goes to, he's going to be a top 10 quarterback for fantasy. So it's a little risky given the current state of the Packers and Aaron Rodgers situation. But if that gets worked out and you have Aaron Rodgers starting for the Packers for the next couple of years, that's a phenomenal trade for you. And you have Jordan Love too. So you even have his like succession plan, assuming he stays with Green Bay.
And then it was a second for Gallup.
And you got, a talented young receiver. And it looks like you recognize that was a weak point in your roster as well. And you went out and got a young, talented receiver that should appreciate in value once the season's over and he's a free agent.
Looking at this team, what are your initial thoughts in terms of competition this year? Because there's a couple glaring holes that I see that might be standing in the way.
I suppose your RB3 is kind of weak, but you do have some guys that are serviceable this year because you have Nyheim Hines, because you have Tony Pollard, because you have James White. Between those three guys, I think you'll be able to get a serviceable RB3. It's not ideal. Obviously, you'd want to have a Kareem Hunt or someone like that as your RB3 in an ideal situation. But to me, that's the weakest part of your team outside of wide receiver depth as well. It looks like behind your top three guys, Jefferson, Thomas, and Claypool. If any of them got hurt or whatever, you got to be starting Christian Kirk, Emmanuel Sanders, Sterling Shepard, Traquan Smith consistently. Michael Gallup, I guess, is also another good option there. But overall, I think your wide receiver depth, especially your wide receivers 4 spot, is probably the weakest point on your roster, in my opinion.
For sure. And overall, in terms of your situation, this team looks like to me, wait and see where you're at the deadline. If you're competing, maybe you go for some more win now pieces. If you're not competing, guess what? Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Hurts should all be at their prime values by midseason. You could probably get an abundance of picks, an abundance of young pieces if you wanted to transition to a 2022-2023 contender. Overall, there's a very flexible team that you can make adjustments on the fly with.
Yeah, exactly. And along with those guys, Kamara and Thomas, you could also move if you're, in the dumpster, like 2 guys get injured on your team. And the scary thing for you is that you don't really have that much draft capital. Yeah. Like you do have your first in 2023, but you don't have your first next year or your second next year. And you got Jonathan Taylor out of that trade. So that was absolutely worth it. But it does box you in a little bit to try and compete this year. And if you do have a down season, then that first ends up being a lot higher than you anticipated in that Taylor trade. But even if that first is the 101, I would still make that Taylor trade.
Yep, absolutely. So we can get on to the next team. It's a 1 quarterback, half PPR league. So you guys can see the team at quarterback. He's starting Ryan Fitzpatrick currently obviously with the news of Deshaun Watson and the uncertainty of Jameis Winston, whether he's going to get that starting nod. Running backs, Eckler, Taylor, Montgomery as the starters. Wide receiver, McLaurin, Antonio Brown, and Gallup. Tight end, Jonnu Smith. So the questions he has here, number 1, with the 101, should I go with Najee Harris or Jamar Chase?
Jamar Chase is the clear answer for me. Yeah, I do. I view those guys in the same tier. In a 1 quarterback league, it's the top 3 guys and Travis Etienne for me. Like that's the way I view the top tier. I know you could, get queued and try and trade the 101 for the 102 plus. So however, Jamar Chase there, I think you have a very glaring need at wide receiver. And we don't usually want to pick for need, but I do have those guys in the same tier. And to me, Chase is absolutely worth that pick.
Yeah, it's definitely fair. I think you could make an argument both ways. The only thing that might give me a little bit of pause is that it's only a half-point PPR, so the running back scarcity is even more higher in that regard. Like, theoretically here, I know it might be a lot of shuffling.
The thing with Harris right now is that he's not like a guy that has very high trade value too, because of the offensive line situation and Ben's uncertainty of the future. If this was a 101 running back that was very certain future, and then you just pick him, right? And you figure the rest out later. But because Harris is down on value a little bit in the eyes of most casual fans, I personally would just go with the wide receiver. I think Chase is worth that pick. You can pull that off. And I honestly would consider Pitts too.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. Either way, yeah. Do what you feel like. Again, I'm fine with either
If you
route.
try fielding offers for some of your running backs first before you make this pick, because if somebody's willing to give you a great wide receiver for Eckler or for Montgomery or something like that, then you can take Najee Harris and address your wide receiver core that way. So you got some flexibility, but I personally would take Chase.
He mentions that later on. He says, should I try to offload Eckler for a younger running back or wide receiver? I would need to know what you're dealing it with. Are you dealing with like an Amari Cooper plus a first, or are you dealing with like someone like in that tier? If that's the case, I'm entertaining that type of offer. Aside from that, kind of Corey mentioned, if you believe Jamar Chase and Harris are in the same tier, that's the only validation I would have for picking need there if you're drafting within tier. So again, Chase, he's an absolute stud at the wide receiver position. So if you want to go that route, I'm fine with that. I personally would go Harris and figure it out because I still think that in a half-point PPR, the running back scarcity does take priority, and you could always figure out the wide receivers. But if you have Chase in terms of talent, in terms of opportunity, in terms of situation in that tier, go ahead and take your guy there.
Yeah. And like I said, if the 102 the person who has the 102 needs a running back, talk to him. Be like, I don't want to take Najee Harris. You need Najee Harris. I would like to take Jamar Chase. Do you want to make a move? Maybe they give you a Michael Pittman Jr. or like some like young receiver that you believe in, whoever it is. It's Henry Ruggs or something like that, or maybe they're willing to give you someone like Jerry Jeudy or someone like higher than that. And they're willing to make a move like that so that they can get up to the 101 and take Najee Harris. You move down to the 102 and take the guy that you were going to get anyway.
Yep, absolutely. And in terms of drafting wide receivers with your second rounders, I would do that regardless. Honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. At that 201, your best option most likely is going to be a wide receiver, because in a one quarterback league, you're probably not going to get a Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman, or Devontae Smith at that 201. You're probably looking more in the tier of Terrace Marshall, De'Ami Brown, Rondell Moore. So Terrace Marshall would be my biggest target probably at that 201, assuming Elijah Moore, Devontae Smith, and Rashad Bateman are already gone. But that 201 also could be earmarked for a quarterback as well. Or the 206 could be earmarked for a quarterback, because you have a lot of uncertainty at your quarterback situation right now. I don't think it's a bad idea to inject some youth into that situation.
Yep, absolutely. So any closing thoughts, or can we head into Sulono?
No, we can go into Sulono's team. And I think when you look at his team, he's got a one quarterback league, half PPR. You guys can see the roster there. He's got currently starting Jameis Winston as his quarterback, who we don't even know if he's starting for his NFL team. So that's a little bit of a dicey situation to be in. But he has Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins as his top two running backs, CeeDee Lamb, DJ Moore, Deebo Samuel, Chase Claypool, Laviska Shenault, Michael Gallup, Michael Pittman. So pretty deep wide receiver core. Tight end, he's got Hunter Henry and Cole Kmet. And it looks like he still hasn't had his rookie draft yet. He's got the 101, the 102, the 202, the 203, and the 501. He has all his picks in 2022, all his picks in 2023. So he says this is an orphan team that he adopted 2 years ago, and basically it had Nick Chubb as the best player, and the next best player behind Nick Chubb was like an end-of-career Devontae Freeman. So he said the team was year-old dog water, and it's been a real project. I like the terminology there. I appreciate that. Any moves that really jump out? He said this team, this league has some super stacked teams. So in that kind of context, you got to take into account that you need to basically be able to compete with a super stacked team on paper. So you're always looking to delay your rebuild when you can and just pick up the best available players where you can. And I think he said, what's your expected timeline to compete? Expecting one of Lance Lawrence to fall to 202 since everyone else is loaded at quarterback. So let's start with the rookie picks and what direction you would go with those. So what he says is his projected selection, I guess the way he's currently leaning with these picks, is he has the 101 and the 102. He said he's thinking going Najee Harris and Kyle Pitts. I agree. I think that is exactly where I would go as well. Given the makeup of your team, you have two great young running backs, but you can always add another great young running back in Najee Harris, and your tight ends is probably the most suspect part of your team in terms of, secure future and fantasy production. And like he said, it's a one quarterback league. He should be able to get a quarterback with either one of those 202 or 203. And I might even take two quarterbacks there.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. Again, your wide receiver is probably the stronghold of your team. Considering the fact that you turned Chubb and dog water into that team, like, you got to be impressed with yourself. You did a very good job overall here. But yeah, I'm earmarking that 101 and 102 for Najee and Pitts. Another option I could see here is if somebody like is at 103 and is in dire need of a fucking running back, just seeing what you could fucking auction that for. If you can just, make that type of move and still get a guy in that tier with Jamar Chase while also getting, let's say somebody gives you
a first next year or something like that.
something like that. Like if this is a competitive at the top league and somebody really wants to make that step to compete and believes Najee Harris is going to be a top 12 to 14 running back this year, you could get that type of absurd value. So that's the one thing I would say. Aside from that, just sit and pick and you're fine there. In terms of 202, 203, yeah, I mean, with Winston only on the roster, you could.
Lance or Lawrence is definitely my big targets there.
Dude, would you be opposed to getting both of them and having?
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, if they're they're both there at 202, 203, grab them both. Honestly, like your receiver core is deep, it's young, it's got some upside. So who's going to help your team more? Like taking a Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, and I would say odds on one of those guys is going to hit big, just based on what I believe in them as prospects and how their rushing can translate to the NFL and stuff. So if you take both of those guys, they're probably going to help your team more than Rondale Moore or Terrace Marshall even would at that 202, 203 spot. So that's the direction I would go. And then at 501, just take, anybody that has upside, because at that point in the draft, it's kind of a crapshoot.
Yep, absolutely. So the next team that we got left, unless you have any closing thoughts here.
No, we got two more teams left. One of them is just actually a trade. TomJonHen sent in a couple short questions in the past couple videos. So appreciate the short questions because we do get a lot of submissions and these ones are easy to go through. So he basically did a 3-way trade in his league. And basically the context of the trade, you guys can see the trade on the screen right now, but the context of the trade is that he is team 1. He lost in the 2020 championship. So he was the runner up in his league. He has DK Metcalf and CeeDee Lamb. So wide receiver youth and upside isn't a concern. And he received in this trade Julio Jones and a 2024 first. But he did send away T. Higgins in a 2024 second. So let's analyze his part of the trade first, and then we'll look at the trade as a whole. So given what he gave up was obviously some youth at the receiver position in exchange for some win now. So what are your thoughts on that side of the trade for team 1?
I don't mind making this move, honestly. Again, with CeeDee Lamb and DK Metcalf there, you already have a couple really good young wide receivers. And making that push with Julio Jones, you basically say to yourself, okay, I'm going to try to win the championship within the next 2 years. In worst case scenario, if I don't, guess what? I'm assuming you still have your 2024 first as well. You'll have 2 firsts in that draft class to be able to reload. So overall, as much as I love T. Higgins here, if you're a contender, I don't mind making this type of move because I still think Julio Jones is at minimum a top 15 to 18 wide receiver this year, which could really help you take you over the top. And getting that value jump from, again, in a 14-team league, that second to the first is huge in my opinion.
Right. Okay. So team 2 and team 3 will analyze their part of the trades just, for an overview. Team 2 won the championship last year, so they're the defending champ. They're looking for an infusion of young talent, and they traded away Chris Carson for T. Higgins. Yeah, great infusion of young talent there. I'm assuming you have like an older receiving core. You have probably a running back core that is young and talented. You don't really need a guy like Chris Carson. If any of you guys out there have you're 4 deep at running back and Chris Carson's one of them, like one of the previous teams that we talked about was, if you can flip him for a guy like T. Higgins or Brandon Ayuk, yeah, all day. I would do that all day and twice on Sunday. So good job for team 2. I would say just by overview, I think team 2 did the best job of anybody in this trade. Sorry to TomJonHen, who was team 1, but I think
rank him second though.
Yeah, I would put him second. And team 3, we can go over his situation right now. He was a playoff team in 2020. He had Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper, Kenny Golladay, OBJ, and Julio. So he had a lot of great receivers, but he needed a RB2 very badly. And when you're backed into a corner like that and you need a certain position that badly, you tend to make trades that aren't really in your favor. And to me, giving up Julio Jones in a first rounder in 2024, probably not worth Chris Carson a 2024 second. Because in my opinion, I don't even think Chris Carson is going to be relevant in 2024. So that is a 1 to 2 year window move. He was a playoff team in 2020, so hopefully he can compete with a move like this. But I personally wouldn't have made this. I think you could have gotten a better asset than Chris Carson with some of the receivers you had at your disposal to trade away.
Yep, absolutely. But he does ask if it's a win-win-win, although we're lower on the value for team 3 here. We do see the rationale, like from where he's at. So yeah, like if all owners believe that they have a chance at the championship, I do see this being as a win-win-win type of deal where one person isn't getting absolutely shafted, even though we disagree with their valuation. Heck, it could work out. What if Chris Carson's a good running back this year? Overall, this is the type of 3-team deal that you don't see very often where all owners are pretty satisfied with what they got. But yeah, in terms of my personal view, I would rank it team 2 side, team 1 side, and then team 3 side.
Yep, I agree.
All right, so we can get on to the next team, and actually the final team of the video, and that's going to be Eteit's team, or Etait, or his team. You guys can see it on the screen. It's a 12-team half PPR, 2-quarterback league. And in a 2-quarterback league, his quarterbacks being Daniel Jones and Justin Fields, we're going to get into it, but it's a little scary after Justin Fields, in my opinion. I will just mention that right there. Running backs, absolutely phenomenal with that 4 stack. Wide receivers, very young, very talented there. Tight end, you got Cole Kmet, and what looks like to be all your picks. So the context, his league just did their startup draft, and his question is really, what moves should he make? He knows he's stacked at running back, but what should he try to trade? I'd let you kick it off with your initial thoughts and potential moves you're thinking.
Myles Gaskin's such a clear, obvious trade candidate for me, because you're probably not even going to start the guy, right? Like, and he has very short-term value, should have some value to somebody who's weak at running back. I don't know if you'd be able to pull a move like this off, but if somebody in your league believes in like Jordan Love or Teddy Bridgewater or Jared Goff, if you could flip one of those maybe quarterbacks with Myles Gaskin into a secure quarterback, like, even if you can only get Zach Wilson for that, like if you can trade Jordan Love and Myles Gaskin for Zach Wilson, maybe you even have to throw a pick on top of that, I would still be willing to do that. That is a great trade for you, because then you have, 2 for sure solidified quarterbacks in Fields and Wilson, and you'd also have Daniel Jones, who we, hope can take a step forward in his career and become a little bit more of a for sure option for the future.
Yep, I absolutely agree there. Looking at this here, he also says nobody in this league really likes Travis Etienne, and you ready for the kicker? He's able to get him at the 7-10 in their startup.
Absurd. Yeah, like just don't trade him then. You just keep him on your roster, because he's going to return value on that. I guarantee it. So if you're looking, what are your thoughts on potentially trading Taylor? Because he has such high value, you could probably get a very good quarterback in return for Jonathan Taylor. And then suddenly, if you have, let's say you can get Prescott straight up for Taylor. There'll probably be some picks involved here and there, but let's say you just get Prescott for Jonathan Taylor at some point. Then your starting roster is, Prescott, Justin Fields, Daniel Jones, and then some maybe quarterbacks on the bench. You still have Cam Akers, Antonio Gibson, Travis Etienne, and Myles Gaskin. Would you make a move trading away Jonathan Taylor for a secure quarterback like Dak Prescott or like Kyler Murray, or even, potentially Justin Herbert or whatever? And there'd probably be some picks involved here and there, but just at face value, would you do something like that?
Well, I'll tell you right now, Jonathan Taylor at face value is my 4th-ranked Dynasty player. Dak Prescott, same tier, 6th-ranked Dynasty player, like in terms of startup value.
Right.
Given the status of your roster, I would indeed make this move. As much as I love Jonathan Taylor, if Dak Prescott is in the exact same tier, in my opinion, as Jonathan Taylor as an asset, and given the status of your team with Daniel Jones, Jared Goff, Jordan Love, Teddy Bridgewater trying to vie for your quarterback spot.
Maybe one of those guys hits for the next 2 to 3 years. Maybe max. So yeah, if you can do that type of move, I would agree. And even if you can get, let's just say hypothetically, somebody wants to throw you Tannehill first and a younger running back to try to get Taylor like that, I think that would be a type of move you could look at as well. Yeah, and given the fact that your tight end core is a little weak too, maybe you could get Irv Smith, Ryan Tannehill, and a 1st-round pick for Jonathan Taylor or something like that. Or even maybe you could get a better tight end. Then maybe you get Dallas Goedert and a first and Ryan Tannehill.
Noah Fant. Like,
yeah, I think shopping Taylor might be a smart move for you just to secure that quarterback position, because it does make me quite nervous, especially in a 2-quarterback format. You said in a super flex, Taylor and Dak are in the same tier. In a 2-quarterback format, it's probably a lot, might even favor Dak Prescott on that side.
Yeah, I absolutely agree there. So overall, you're in a great position, and how
you definitely have some flexibility. That's the point here, is that you're in a good spot. You need to make some moves, I would say, but you definitely have the ammunition to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. I also, if again, he mentions should I be a win now team? It's a type of team there. Yeah, the quarterback 2 spot's a little iffy in my opinion. The tight end, as much as I love Cole Kmet, he hasn't really proven it just yet. And while wide receivers are very good at the top initially, I do think you kind of might need a one more win now depth piece at the wide receiver position, maybe going after
Antonio Brown.
Antonio Brown would be a good pickup, like someone in that kind of regard, just to help you get over the hump while those young guys like Diami, Terrace Marshall develop.
Right. So that's our thoughts on your team. I can't pronounce your name, so I'm not even going to try. But yeah, exactly. So if you guys enjoyed this video, as always, like, comment, and subscribe. We actually have our draft guide officially live. Today is July 16th. It is the first day that our draft guide has been live. We had some technical issues, but we got those worked out. So if you guys are interested in our draft guide, then you guys can go to underdogfantasy.com. using promo code FSE at sign up and first deposit with a minimum of $10, you'll get a $25 bonus to play with on the site. So that's $10 deposit, $35 on the website to play with. And you'll also get both of our draft guides for free. And another special announcement, we have a brand new campaign starting as well. For those of you guys that want to win a free draft guide and win a guaranteed spot into our listener league, comment any of the suggestions that you guys have seen or have done in your own leagues for a potential league punishment. Because as the winner of my home league last year, I was entrusted with the responsibility of choosing what our league's punishment is for the last place finisher. And that will be an ongoing campaign that we run probably up until the beginning of August. So if you guys have any suggestions for league punishments, comment them down below in any of our videos, this one specifically, or tweet at us with the hashtag #PickMyLeaguePunishment. So if you guys want a chance to win a free draft guide, spot into our listener league, you can go ahead and do that. Peace out, guys, and enjoy your Friday.